Hi, I'm Donna Allward, and thanks for joining us at Step Into the Story for our monthly book chat. I'm with Barbara Tanner Wallace.
Hello.
We are besties, readers, and authors, and between us, we've written somewhere around 100 books.
I wrote 2. Donna's
So how are things, Barb?
Not bad. Not bad. Catching my breath. Had the grandbaby up for the weekend, so
Nice.
Always fun activities, but no one really slept.
Including the baby.
The baby actually was an angel. He I have to admit, he was an angel, but he's 6 weeks old, so his idea of being an angel is I'm up at 2 because I'm hungry. I'm up at 4 because I'm hungry.
Yeah. Well, at 6 weeks, hopefully in another couple weeks, maybe a month, that'll be down to 1 feeding in the night. And then, I just remember when I was getting like 4 to 5 hours in a chunk of sleep, I felt like an entirely new woman. So I hope that comes for her soon.
I think it will. And I've come to the conclusion a baby can't be bad. I mean, nothing they're doing is personal.
No.
Sometimes it feels it, but
yeah. Why? That's funny. Well, we had Thanksgiving here on the weekend, so I'm full of turkey. Yeah, I'm full of turkey, and our eldest and her partner were down for the weekend, which was really fun. And so we were just missing one, which is too bad, but rumor has it she might be home for Christmas, so we might actually have everybody here for Christmas.
That'll be really nice.
Yeah, but down to business.
Yeah.
Today we're talking about Olivia Hawker's book, The Fire and the Ore. It's the first book by this author that either one of us have read.
Yep.
And personally, I can say that it is different from anything I've ever read before.
I would agree with that too. I think it was a huge departure for us. It was, it was different than anything we read. A big departure in the types of, first in the part of history and the topic.
Yeah. And also in like just the style and that, yeah. So I think we should give our viewers some background and context. So this is a fictionalized account of Olivia's ancestors, and she addresses this in her author's note. And she was brought up a Mormon, but has since left the church. And we're going to be talking a little bit about if and how that outwardly manifested during the novel. But I want to read the back cover copy so that everybody kind of knows what we're talking about here.
Okay.
So 1857, 3 women, once strangers, come together in unpredictable Utah territory. Hopeful, desperate, and willful, they'll allow nothing on earth or in heaven to stand in their way. Following the call of their newfound Mormon faith, Tamar Loader and her family weather a brutal pilgrimage from England to Utah, where Tamar is united with her destined husband, Thomas Ricks. Clinging to a promise for the future, she abides an unexpected surprise. Thomas is already wedded to one woman, Tabitha, a local healer, and betrothed to still another.
Surprise!
Yeah, ta-da! So orphaned by tragedy and stranded in Salt Lake City, Jane Shoup, and Jane is another one of the wives, struggles to provide for herself and her younger sister. She's no member of the Mormon migration, yet Jane agrees to marry Thomas. Out of necessity and with no love lost, she too must bear the trials of a sister wife. But when the U.S. Army's invasion brings the rebellious Mormon community to heel, Tamar, Jane, and Tabitha are forced to retreat into the hostile desert wilderness with little in common but the same man, and the resolve to keep themselves and their children alive. What they discover as one is redemption, a new definition of family, and a bond stronger than matrimony that is tested like never before. So that's what it's about.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
I first discovered this book at the Historical Novel Society conference. The author, Olivia Hawker, taught a workshop about plotting and structure, and she used this book or parts of this book as examples, and it sounded very interesting when she was describing it. So it kind of went on my radar from then, and then it went on your radar too after hearing her talk.
Yeah,
she gave out one of the keynote speeches, so we were eager to read it, and we should give a heads up that the book is very heavy on faith and religion, particularly in the first third or so. It's not that it's a religious book, but the characters' actions are driven by their faith. I mean, obviously, it's about the Mormons, and it's about their persecution and their desire to reach, or a good chunk of it is Tamar's family is driven to get to the land of Zion. And they're driven by their faith. And for those who don't know much about Mormon history, they were very persecuted. They were driven out of England. They were driven out of New England. They were driven out of the Midwest. And in around the mid-1850s, they had no other place to go. And they were driven out of Illinois, partly because of the practice polygamy, partly just because they weren't the right religion. They were driven west further, and Brigham Young created this place he called Zion, which later became Utah. And that's where a lot of them headed. They believed that that's where they would go to be able to practice their beliefs in peace. And they actually wanted to create their own little country. I don't know. But he'd kind of established this Mormon country out west, and that's where all these people will go. And that's what the first third's about, is her family's trip, the Loader family trip from England to Utah.
Yeah. And I found that journey, that pilgrimage, really to be heavy on the religion, and something that you and I are going to have a small debate about.
Yeah, we're not going to turn this into a religious argument,
right? But but the concept of blind faith. So what frustrated me in that first section, and it wasn't nothing to do with the writing, it was totally frustration with the characters, because I felt like their zeal and their faith went against common sense, and that they willfully ignored some pretty obvious dangers. And I think, and because faith is the driving force behind this migration, of course, it's front and center in that part of the book.
Yeah, I was okay with it. I mean, at first off, I thought that it was important story-wise, because you needed to see how strongly Tamar felt, and you needed to see how rooted she was in her faith to understand the actions later in the book. I mean, she enters this polygamous marriage. You don't do that lightly. So we had to establish just how strong her belief was. And I think I was okay on it from a personal level, only because I was telling you in notes earlier this week, my family, my ancestors were Huguenots, and some were Quakers. They both came to America to escape religious persecution.
Yeah.
And I think that, I think that she did a terrific job of illustrating how desperate you can get, really, these people were for finding a place to just practice their lives in peace. Yeah. And I guess they were zealous. Okay. I mean, they were having visions and things like that, but I don't know if I'd call it blind faith. Because blind faith kind of means, to me anyways, it means like having faith in the face of obvious evidence to the contrary. I think they had incredibly strong faith. I think that it was, I mean, that's like one of the things with like the Loaders. I didn't know that they ran out of wagons. So at some point the Mormons walked, pushing hand carts across the country. And first off, they walked from Illinois to Utah, which was interesting in of itself.
Yeah.
And the father has money for a wagon and doesn't take it because he doesn't want to look like an apostate. It's very important to him that he looks like he's not shirking his moral core, moral responsibilities, moral beliefs. So yes, that's a zealot. But at the other hand, I think as they had such faith that that God was going to bring them to a good place. I don't think that was blind. I think it feels like to us, because hindsight's 2020. We know how much it was going to be bad. I don't think any of them really know. I think they had this faith that God would get them to the right place. I don't think any of them knew how bad the winter would be. I don't think any of them knew realistically. I think they were naive and didn't understand the dangers. But you have to have pretty strong faith to get on a boat and come to America to begin with. Yeah. And I go back to my ancestors. They had to have pretty strong faith to say, hey, let's leave France and go to the New World in 1630. So again, I guess it was that. So it didn't bother me so much. I think that I saw it if they were having just a really deep faith. If you don't have deep faith, what you're going to look at is say, oh my God, this looks like you're really over the top. Because they have such a strong belief in God's will. And you do need to go into that understanding that God's will is very important to them.
Right. But okay. So one point that you just made, and now I'm going to have to go back in the book and see, because maybe I'm remembering it wrong. But when it came to the carts, I thought they had got there and had decided to, get a wagon, and then they were told that wagons were not allowed, that they were being told they had to use a cart.
I thought they were told that there wasn't enough wagons. So
I'm remembering it differently. So now I want to go back and find out, because that was one of the big things for me, because I felt like there was contrary evidence and a lack of common sense.
Oh, and I thought that it had to do with that there wasn't enough wagons. So that's why they were going with the carts, because these two cart companies really underestimated what they were doing. And like that whole disaster, there's a disaster that's an historic disaster.
Yeah.
And that was because of the handcart companies and their idiocy.
Well, yes.
And it comes up that the father has enough money and was still considering it. And that's when they were shaming him into thinking, what, you think you're better than the rest of us who are going to walk. And I think there were wagons, but they were very expensive. And the majority of the Mormons couldn't afford them, and because they were so.
But no one in that company had one. They all had carts. The only wagons were for supplies.
And I think that was the case. If you had a ton of money, you probably could have bought a supply wagon. But the idea was that we have so few that they're going to go to the
Okay, now I'm going to have to find it and go back and look, because I read it before you. But I think
we'll both go back and then we'll correct our debate.
We'll put in the comments or something. But I felt like the one person who was saying all the things that I wanted to like shout at these characters was Patience, one of the sisters.
Right.
And she went along because she didn't want to be separated from her family. And it wasn't that she didn't believe. She was like sort of the voice of reason, and like she could see the dangers, and it seemed like no one else could, or they would just say, oh, well, but God will look after us. And
I think that's not blind faith so much as I just think it was very, very deep faith.
Okay. You see it as deep faith. I see it as blind faith. So,
yeah. And I think that is something readers should realize, that, you might see it one way or the other.
Yeah. But okay. So regardless of that, that's what makes this interesting to talk about, though, because everyone brings their own experience and perspectives to what they read, like not just this book, but anything they read. So this makes it really, really interesting. And then we'll leave that part behind.
I just want to say, I would not walk from Illinois to Utah. And
I'm sure as shooting wouldn't be pulling my own cart with my
own cart at some point.
Or walking it when I was pregnant, because Zilpah did that.
Oh yeah, one of the characters we should point out, she's 7 months pregnant when they're taken off, and they think they'll get there in time for the delivery date.
And she's going to walk, however many miles. It's okay. So anyway.
Because I put on the hand cart company. It only take 8 weeks to walk to Utah.
Yep. So
we can cover 10 miles a day in the storm. We're fine.
Oh, sure. So when we get to the middle, when they arrive, Tamar goes to Centerville to marry Thomas. And so she leaves her family behind and goes, and it's not that far away, but she's still not with her family. And the focus shifts at this point. And I found I liked this part of the book better. She's pretty excited to be marrying Thomas. She likes him a lot. She feels he is her destiny. She sees him in a vision. She realizes this is like a predestined thing for her.
Although he hasn't proposed yet. We should point that out.
Yeah, but she doesn't realize that he's already married.
She didn't know she was going to stay with his wife. Yeah.
Yeah, and she decides to go through with it regardless. When Jane, who is not a Mormon, arrives at the wedding and reveals that she is also betrothed to Thomas.
Surprise.
And I think this is the part where things got really interesting to me from here on out, because at its core, like we've talked a lot about the religion and faith in the front end of the book. But what this book is really about is sisterhood and female relationships. And like in the beginning, there's a lot of friction between the sisters, and both are protective of their pregnant sister, Zilpah, and their mother. But then when Tamar suddenly has another family that includes Tabitha and Jane, it's like neither of those women like her. And I found what was interesting is that each of Thomas's wives marry him for a different reason. And Tabitha is more forgiving of Jane's reasons.
Which makes sense. The first third of the book, I was going to say, so the first third of the book is laying the groundwork for why Tamar is going to marry him and why Jane's going to marry him.
Yeah. And
there are very different reasons. Jane is marrying him out of necessity.
Yeah. And Tamar is marrying him out of love.
Right.
And so, one would be a lot easier to accept than another as a first wife. So, and then as the story progresses, we see these relationships between these sister wives change and grow. And this was accomplished in a big part because Olivia had wrote it so that Thomas was actually absent most of the time, serving Brigham Young and being in the Legion as tensions with the U.S. Army grew. And so the women had to rely on each other.
Yeah. First off, Thomas was a really, really weak man. I mean, that's just my take on it. I was glad he was gone for most of the book.
Me too.
But I also think that him being gone, when he showed up, it emphasized exactly how weak he was versus the strength of these women. I mean, these women had serious backbone.
Yeah.
Were serious survivors. And you saw that for the first third of the book, how they survived without him. So when they were with him, he was supposedly, it was supposedly a great, what was it? They used it as a blessing and a privilege to be a sister wife.
Yeah.
But I think that taking him out of the book was a great way of illustrating just what these women were. Because
the book's not about him.
No,
it's really about them. And so she just got him out of the way.
It's not about their relationship either. I mean, other than that they married him, he's not the important relationship in this.
No. So, and going back to them not knowing each other like beforehand, I actually didn't realize that polygamy wasn't widely practiced in the early days in Utah. Like I knew it in Mormonism now, it's not a thing.
No, only in some very, very, very warped.
But yeah, in mainstream Mormonism, that's been outlawed for a long, long time. But, in the book, you realize that this is something that is kept secret. Not everyone in the community knows about it. You're sort of chosen to be able to do this. And so there's a line.
Incidentally, all the chosen ones were part of Brigham Young. I'm going to say
it's like that inner circle, right?
Inner circle. Like, my bestie is also
It's a status thing. And there's a line where one of the wives makes a comment about polygamy being a construct by the men in order to achieve status and also sanction infidelity. And I found this really interesting and not necessarily untrue.
Oh, no, I totally got it.
Yeah. But then I think that's very different from our current concept of polyamory, which is based on honesty and consent. And there's a scene where Tabitha challenges Thomas a bit as to why he never told her that he was taking another wife or two. And he says, he let God lead him to the timing. But I felt like this was such a cowardly response that was more I couldn't get up the nerve to tell you thing. And that's certainly not honesty or consent. He did it and then just sort of presented it. And so, as you can tell, I really didn't like him at all.
I did not like him at all. I would say the thing I found interesting about the whole polygamy thing was in her notes, she talked about how the different forms were. In some cases, they were based on mutual respect and what do you want to say? Permission, and that they were, some things like to hide same-sex relationships, or were based on need. Like they would marry someone and never sleep with them. It was simply to put them under their protection because the woman couldn't survive without someone taking care of her in that place. But the truth was, in this environment, the women had no choice.
Right.
Because of that. I disliked Thomas immensely. I thought he was incredibly selfish. And I thought she did a great job of explaining that even Tamar, who married him out of love and a belief in it at first, realized that, you don't really have a choice. It's
No,
once you're in it, you're stuck in it.
Yep. And then she became a bit disillusioned, right?
Yes, she did.
Yeah. So,
but I did think she did a great job of explaining how the sister wife concept came to be.
Yeah.
And how it worked. And
Yeah.
I didn't really understand polygamy. Still don't groove on polygamy, but she gave a very good, she did a very good job of explaining the bonds that the sister wives felt.
Yeah.
And you felt like that was a true family, and you understood why these women managed to connect with each other and not feel necessarily super jealous because they were the family with this guy who just kept coming in and going out of their life.
Yeah. Well, there were times too when, big things would happen where, one of them would need help. And it didn't matter how much they were, not getting along or, they hadn't really bonded together. They were still there for each other. And I don't want to spoil it by saying, but there are times when, each of them really need Tabitha, or Jane really needs Tamar, and it's just,
sorry.
And so it's it's really interesting how, well, it just shows how that relationship grows,
and that they turn to each other.
Yeah. And you made a comment that that at the end of their lives, if asked who they loved more, the women would name each other and not Thomas. And I thought that was, like, I hadn't thought of it that way, but I agree with that so much.
And I was going to say, one of the things we will keep secret is one of these women is Olivia Hawker's ancestor. We're not going to tell you who. She tells it at the end.
Yeah, it's in the author's notes.
I was like, oh. So I think you don't want to spoil that.
Yeah. No, and honestly, I'm getting so good at waiting to read the author's note until the end of the book.
I'm glad
I finished it and I read it, and it's an excellent author's note.
Yeah, very educational.
Yeah, and just really interesting. So the ending, and again, without giving it away, I'm just going to say I was kind of surprised that it ended where it did.
Yeah.
Or how it did, but it also left, because I was waiting for that scene to go on, and instead it just sort of stopped. But then I feel like stopping it where she did left such a strong note or final image as far as the sisterhood went that had been forged between them.
Well, once again, Thomas is really not part of the family.
No, and like,
I love that.
He's kind of like the thing that kind of, holds them together, but he doesn't really matter. It's kind of interesting.
I know. I thought that was it, and
yeah.
I like that part.
So I think it makes, like, after I was like, oh, really? I don't get to see like the rest. And then I thought, but no, this is where it's like, it is where it's supposed to end. I just thought it was so neat how she did that.
It was very well written. There is a reason why Olivia Hawker teaches workshops on plotting and structure and writing. It's because she knows how to do it.
Yeah.
And she did a great job. The other thing I was really impressed, and I think I said it to you, and I know you agree, it was very balanced. I mean, she's left the Mormon church. She's made no secret that she's a former, she grew up in a devout Mormon family, but she's left the church. But it was not a bully pulpit against the religion or polygamy. It was a story. And she treated it very respectfully. She was, she walked that line, understanding that there are Mormons who are very good people who practice the faith, and you may not agree with it, but they're good people who believe in doing good to others. And then there's people who warped the religion. Yeah. And she walks that line, balancing and trying to accept that there's both, and that this was part of their history. And I really enjoyed it in that sense.
Yeah. And that's every religion has that, right? And I just felt like she did balance it really well. And it was, there were great things about it, but there was also this sort of dark side of it that just was not okay. That was really subjugating, and there was a lot of ambition.
Without diminishing the participants.
Yeah.
The women still came across as strong, capable women. They weren't diminished at all in their personhood, although the practice diminished them, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So final verdict, recommend?
I would. I mean, wouldn't necessarily run out and grab another book on polygamy. And I mean, the concept still squicks me out.
Yeah.
But I would recommend it. I think it was educational. I think it was really well done. Some brilliant passages in her writing. Like when she was certain things she described, and I was like, I tried to highlight on my Kindle and I couldn't get my Kindle highlight to work. She had some beautiful prose in there.
Yeah, I agree with you about the balance, and I think I came away with this realizing that I'm not sure I loved it.
Yeah,
but I respect it so much, and I appreciate the quality of the writing. The story was definitely compelling because I found myself needing to get back to it. And like after I finished it, it stuck with me and I found myself thinking about it, and it challenged me too, because I will admit I have a few biases that I carry around, and it forced me to confront those. So I would call this a very worthy read, and would definitely recommend it.
Yeah, I would recommend it. I was going to ask, did you have a favorite sister wife?
Tabitha.
Did you like Tabitha? I was Jane.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I liked Jane a lot.
So why did you like Jane? We've got a few.
Because I think that Olivia did a very good job of setting up exactly how hard this woman had it and just how capable she was. And while I admired Tamar and her strong faith, and God knows I would not have gone through what she went through, where she was walking in the snow and watching people.
Yeah.
This is not a spoiler. Look up the Martin handcart tragedy, and you will read about it. It's pretty horrible.
Yeah.
And she witnessed it, and it's all true. So I mean, all these people are real people, but Jane, I don't know. There was something about the way she took care of things. She took care of her sister, the way she took care of her mother, the way she took care of the family when it needed it. I was just really impressed by her.
That's your Yankee stoicism.
Yeah, it was. You know what? Yeah. The religious one I'm the religious one of the two of us. And I like the non-Mormon.
There you go. I like Tabitha because
she was kind of badass.
Well, she was, but she's like a community leader.
Yeah.
And she found herself in this situation where, she's married to Thomas and they have children. And then he goes and does this, and like, she doesn't let him off the hook, even though there's not a thing she can do about it.
Yep.
She doesn't let him off the hook, and she doesn't let anybody off the hook,
No,
like
I admire that.
But she's also a healer, and I really like that. So I just found her a really strong character. I don't know. I liked her a lot. Anyway,
I have to say that of the three women, I would be proud to have any one of them be my ancestor, because they were incredibly admirable women.
Yeah.
Strong survivors. So I would have been, you don't know who you find out at the end, but any one of them would have been someone you'd be proud of to have as an ancestor, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, it's Fire and More by Olivia Hawker, for those who want to go out and grab it.
2 thumbs up.
Yep. And it's, by the way, I love this cover. I love the colors. I love the font. I love everything about it.
That's it.
All right.
So that's it for today. But next week, we are going back to our comfort zone. And we are having on Madeline Martin, one of the original Step Into the Story sisters.
Yeah.
She's going to come to talk about The Keeper of Hidden Books. That is her 3rd book. It is very hard to get at your library. I won't be surprised if it's already on. It's probably on. I haven't paid attention to the lists, but It's a great read. It's back in World War II. It's in Poland and talking about censorship and the Warsaw occupation. She does a great job on it, and Madeline's always fun to have on, so we're very excited to have her back. And then on the 24th, we're doing a writing room, and we're going to do our segment on show, don't tell, which is something we've referenced now for 11 months, so we finally should cover it.
Yeah, we keep saying it, you know, like every technique that we talk about, you know, you can do this if you just show and don't tell. So now we're actually going to sort of pull that all together and give some tips on that.
That's it. So where can people find us, Donna, if they're not watching this live?
All right. So they can find us in our Facebook group and join the community at facebook.com/groups/step into the story, or on our YouTube channel at Step Into the Storybooks. And our broadcasts happen at 2 p.m. Eastern, so you can join us live, or you can always check out the replay.
So thank you very much for coming. And hello again, Sue Slade, who I just popped in and said hello. So, and we really hope you read Fire and the Ore, The Fire and the Ore. And we hope you read The Keeper of Hidden Books so you can talk to Madeline.
Yeah, join us on Tuesday.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.